So let's start by setting our motivation. So we think that the purpose of the course, the purpose of our time, is to understand more deeply how the Buddha presented the kinds of transformative insights that reliably lead a person from a state of being ordinary, a state of confusion, a state of ignorance, into a state of wisdom, clarity, and how those insights unlock our innate potential. How the culmination of that potential is the state of full enlightenment. So the purpose of the Buddha's teachings was to explain how we could get the same result that the Buddha got. And I think the purpose of achieving that result is to create the capacity in the mind to be of perfect benefit to sentient beings. To also be capable of leading them out of confusion and ignorance. So we generate these minds of confidence in the teachings and bodhicitta motivation for wanting the result of the teachings to be of benefit to countless sentient beings. All right, good evening. Any questions that have been percolating about prior material before we move on? That's all right. Nope. All right. So tonight we'll be focusing in a way more so on, we're still in the section on how to properly relate to the spiritual guide. We've been discussing the last couple of classes how to properly relate in the mind, which is essentially the training in cultivating the confidence of being able to see the Guru as Buddha. And now we're going to talk about training or how to properly relate to the spiritual guide in action, which is various kinds of in a way, you could say various kinds of offering, various kinds, not really giving, but offering. And maybe we'll see why that's a distinction. So this is training in various types of offering. So we will start then with day 54 on this topic. Day 54 says, says sincere practitioners see each piece of their guru's advice as a wish-fulfilling gem. And this is a phrase that, I imagine it comes up in the Tibetan and in the Sanskrit in various ways, in the sutras and different things. There's I believe it's an Indian kind of mythical story about the wish fulfilling gem. It's kind of like Aladdin's lamp. It's just sort of one of those cultural sorts of things, and I imagine it as a metaphor that was known in ancient India. I imagine it worked its way into the sutras and different things in various ways. It's something that I've noticed that Lama Zopa uses a lot in different teachings. So often, he'll talk about seeing sentient beings as wish-fulfilling gems. And in the sense that we need sorry, we'll have to type to someone in the okay, never mind, they left. I think we had a potential Zoom bomber in the waiting room. Anywho, right, so this idea of the wish-fulfilling gem, Lama Zopa Rinpoche uses it in a variety of contexts, often to telling us that we should see all sentient beings as wish-fulfilling gems, in the sense that by being able to relate positively to them, by being able to practice the six perfections, by being able to restrain the mind from giving rise to afflictions in relation to sentient beings, that essentially by cultivating a really beneficial relationship to sentient beings, that process is the same process that we need to engage in order to achieve our enlightenment. So seeing even difficult people and so on as wish fulfilling, because we wish to achieve enlightenment, and by being able to relate well to them, we accomplish that goal of enlightenment. So they, by giving us the opportunity to put the teachings into practice, we are the ones that get the result of that by our own achieving of enlightenment. But here in Lamrim Year, Lama Zopa is applying that concept in relation to the advice that we're given by the guru, to see each piece. And we've talked, we've touched upon this in prior classes, seeing everything that they are telling us to do, all of the feedback that we're getting, all of the answers to our questions, all of the ways that they are describing how to correctly do a particular meditation or approach a topic, how to understand the meaning of any given teaching in the Lamrim or so on, to see every piece of advice that we're given as being what is fulfilling our own wish to achieve enlightenment. So again, to go back to that in ancient India, there was this idea that like a wish fulfilling gem was like a real thing that you could find, or I don't know exactly how, if there was just one or how it came to be. But it was kind of, like I said, sort of the idea of like rubbing Aladdin's lamp, like it would, if you possessed the wish fulfilling gem, then all of your wishes would come true. So since we wish to achieve enlightenment, here we're meant to see everything that the guru is teaching us as being what is creating the causes and conditions to accomplish that. So it's wish fulfilling for oneself. Um, so, what I mean by one of the ways of offering is that this is, when he says sincere practitioners see their teacher's advice in this way, this is called offering your practice to your teacher, which is considered to be the greatest type of offering that you can give to your teacher, is seeking their advice and then sincerely making an effort to put that advice into practice in your daily life. By doing that, you're giving them the offering of your own effort, because what they most want in the world is for you to achieve enlightenment. That's their only purpose in teaching, is to guide students to enlightenment. And they know that what they are teaching are the reliable methods that the Buddha gave. And so they know that if people put them into practice sincerely, they will get that result. Maybe not in this lifetime, but they will set themselves up for getting that result. And so um, that is what, that would be what pleases their mind more than anything else, is to know that they're not wasting their time, that that you're taking it seriously, that you are putting everything actually into practice as best you can. And then, because then they know that just on the basis of the law of cause and effect, that if you create the causes and the conditions to achieve enlightenment, enlightenment must follow, whether you want it to or not. You've created the right causes and conditions, and then inevitably that result, it will follow on from that effect. So he says this is, like I said, he says that it's the best way to devote to the virtuous friend in our action. And then, of course, he connects this with what we've studied previously. He connects this with the degree of success that we are having with training in confidence in seeing our guru as Buddha. Because, and this is again something that we've touched on, that when you hear advice from someone that you are relating to in a really mundane, ordinary way, it has a reduced efficacy. It's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I'll think about that. Maybe I'll do that, or maybe I won't do that. Depends on what I. But when you are hearing that advice from someone that you're genuinely relating to as a fully enlightened being, then the power of what you're hearing is so much greater than that. You'd be like, of course. It's like Shakyamuni is standing right there and telling me, this is how you do it. This is the best way. This is the correct. So I would be silly not to just completely, immediately, wholeheartedly do nothing but what they've described to me is what I ought to be doing. So what Lama Zopa is pointing out is that the more successfully we can train the mind in seeing it and seeing the guru like that, that will directly relate to how successful we are in not, discarding their advice or putting it off or not seeing it, kind of being like, well, it seems difficult or it doesn't, I prefer not to. Um, you know, all of the kinds of ways that we might resist or be less interested in following it, those are all overcome by how successful we are in really, in a very stable, clear way, having strong confidence, strong faith in seeing the guru as Buddha. He says, if we have strong faith, we are the luckiest people alive because we're able to abide by our guru's advice 24 hours a day. No matter what difficult situation arises, because of our devotion, we experience no hardship. We happily and easily abide by our guru's advice. No matter what difficulties we encounter with the devotion that sees the guru as a Buddha, we feel incredible joy 24 hours a day. So again, it's like as if you were directly, under the tutelage of Shakyamuni Buddha, how, because we probably think that way. We probably think, when we read the sutras, we see all of the people just, getting enlightened left and right, and like how special that time was and how amazing, and we think, oh, but if only I could have that kind of experience, then everything would be solved. But having that kind of experience, again, as we've talked about before, that's kind of up to us. We can cultivate that kind of experience by training in this way. And we've talked about all of the reasons why it's the strength of that mental state that establishes the benefit that we get from following the guru's advice, and not whether the guru's advice is particularly special or particularly, anything. It's one's own, it's the strength of one's own mind in holding to that view, that pure view, that gives that kind of strength, that kind of strong force to our practice. Any thoughts or questions so far? Aaron and then Kodo.
So my question is, what happens if you get, because you can have multiple gurus, what would happen if like they give different advice that's like, would you still get negative karma from that?
So I would say I guess it depends on in what way you're perceiving it as being different between the two pieces of advice, like, and why you're getting advice on the same thing from two people is another thing, because some people do kind of like shop around for advice, and that's not great, because if you've asked one of your teachers something, then you should just accept that that's the answer. And you don't need to ask somebody else the same thing, because you're just following the advice that you were given. But sometimes we don't like the advice that we're given, and we're hoping that somebody else will give us a different answer. And that's not great. Like that is a failure on our part to engage in guru devotion, because there's no need to. Now, it could be a different kind of a thing where we're just like attending a teaching, on how to do something, on Tara practice, or on, and and it sounds like one person is describing it one way, and it sounds like another person is describing it a different way. That's different. There could be many different reasons why that's the case. There are validly different lineages of visualization, of mantra, that exist in Tibet for even what looked like the same practice. Um, and so it could be a historical reason why it's not, it's not like one's right and one's wrong. There's just a historical reason why in this lineage it's visualized like this, and this lineage is visualized like this, or it's pronounced like this, or it's pronounced like that. um, and then I guess if you if it was a practice that you were really doing a lot of, then you might, if you had more like a root guru, and then more of a stronger connection, then you might try to, and this is also true about other things. What I would do is I would try to clarify like which one is best for me. And isn't to say that this person, you know if it could be that they might say, well, yeah, you could do it like this, or you could do it like that. But if you have a closer relationship or a closer connection with someone, then I would say, um, you know and it could be that they are giving a teaching, that was kind of mainly meant for a different person in that audience. um, and that was kind of their reasoning, for presenting it in a particular way. So I think if you're really going to, um, internalize it, and it's really going to be an important part of your how you're approaching something, then I would just clarify it with the person that you have the closest, um, connection to, and try to get them to give you, um, the right way to and sometimes they say, sometimes when something is said, this isn't true if I make a mistake, because like I said, I'm not a guru. So if I make a mistake, it's because I make a mistake, and I say things that are wrong just because I forgot, or I heard something wrong, or I didn't understand something. But they talk about in the textbooks, that they use in the different monasteries, because debate is an important part of the monastic education, and it's not so much how Westerners are learning things, because unfortunately, I mean, that's just not, um, that doesn't really carry over into our culture in the way that kind of centers. It's kind of unfortunate, because it would, and some centers kind of try to, but it hasn't really taken root in the same way. But in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic education, it's the most central teaching technique. Having the students learn things and then debate among themselves in the courtyard after the teaching, to, um, cause doubts to arise, and to, uh, answer those doubts, and that sort of thing. So what they say is that, different textbooks written by different scholars that are used in different monasteries, they describe things in somewhat different ways, uh, to encourage that kind of debate, so that not everyone has the same answer, so that not everyone like just automatically is swallowing just one rote kind of way of thinking about it, that there's a dialectical kind of exchange that's happening between the monasteries. Um, so it could also be that something is presented to encourage our own reflection on it and to raise a doubt, or to raise, so that we have to actually struggle with the material and think about it like that. So yeah, so you can find people who learned from, because somebody's from Sarah May, somebody's from Sarah J, somebody's from Drepung, and they've learned from that particular lineage um, a, a particular way of describing something that's meant to help us to be like, well, but wait a minute, this other person says this, and then it isn't that the guru made a mistake. The guru wanted us to be like, well, but what about this over here? And then to really have to wrestle with it. Um, so that happens. Aaron, was that kind of helpful? Or?
Yes, that was. Thank you.
Kodo, I think you had a question.
I just wanted to say the whole continuance of this guru thing has got me so like, where's my guru? So I'm reading all these various things, and I'm doing the basic program with the Discovering Buddhism, and it's a big chunk of guru devotion, and it's like I'm like, it's like a very hungry person in front of the bakery, but I don't have any money. So thank you. You're doing a great job of getting me prepared. Thank you so much.
Good. Any other questions? So then day 55 has also kind of, is sort of just an extension of this idea, still on this topic of training in correctly devoting in action. And this is also something, I think, because we're coming up toward the end of the this section, so this is also something that's come up before. And but still important to circle back to this idea of what does it, what are the, what's the kind of prerequisite for serving, for making an offering of our practice or serving the guru in that way. And Lama Zopa is pointing out here that it doesn't depend on always being in close physical proximity to the guru. That's certainly very helpful for periods of time, but it isn't necessary all of the time or forever, because Lama Zopa says that when we hold our vows well, when we uphold our commitments well, when we are just making an effort to put whatever they did tell us in the past into practice, or if we try to live our lives in accordance as best we can with the ethical guidelines that they've given us, then whether they are on the other side of the country or in a different country, or whether they've passed away, we are still actively, correctly devoting to the spiritual guide in our actions. because we've internalized what that means, and we're actively doing it in our daily life. So if they, you know, if they have told us that studying Lamrim is important and we're keeping up with that study, if they've given us a practice, and we haven't let that practice lapse, we're really trying to do it as often as we can, then that is how we're upholding correctly devoting in our action by uh, following their advice. And day 56 is the other kind of offering. And that's kind of why I said offering rather than giving, because in a way, because our practice isn't material, our practice isn't so I'm not, maybe you could say that it falls under giving or generosity, but I'm not sure, because it's not an actual thing. We're offering our effort. I mean, they do say that, like, when they talk about generosity in a general way, they say that, like, giving your time is certainly a type of generosity, and in that way, because our practice is something that is we're spending time on in our day, it's a form of generosity. So maybe it's just a semantic difference, I don't know. But day 56 is talking about this other type, which is, you do find it talked about in the Lamrim, and where the other kind of offering is something physical. So, and again, it could be preparing food, for our teacher. It could be um, looking after whether they would like water, whether they would like tea. When, if they've come to a teaching, kind of making sure that, if there's something that they would like, that they have access to it, that's easy. Um, yeah. So it doesn't have to be. So, I mean, the idea isn't that we have to, devote a certain percentage of our income, or that we have to only make offerings of a certain amount or a certain level of, expense or complication. It's just we try to cultivate a mind that is generous, a mind that is having a sense of caring for our teacher, looking after, making sure that, um, that if they need to get somewhere, that they have an easy way of doing it. Because again, of course, what we're getting from the guru is all of the teachings for our own enlightenment. And so, it's kind of as a way of paying that kindness back, we try to generate a mind that is cognizant of their temporal needs, and we try to um, provide conducive conditions for that. Uh, And then, of course, he says, whether or not we physically hear or see that the guru is pleased, the guru is someone who is pleased by our practice, not by receiving material offerings. This is how it should be. However, if we see our virtuous friend made happy by receiving material offerings, it's a mistake to think that this is wrong. That is incorrect devotion to the virtuous friend. High lamas will often show the aspect of being pleased when receiving material offerings just to make the disciple happy. And then he says, we become closer to enlightenment each time we follow our guru's advice, make offerings, or offer service to them, because we thus perform the most powerful purification and collect the most extensive merit. In this way, our level of mind continuously gets higher and higher, and we get closer and closer to enlightenment. So we shouldn't think of providing any kind of material support as something that we're doing for the sake of our teacher, but rather it's something that we're doing for our own mind, that we're doing it because we want to, just like generosity in general isn't something, the primary beneficiary of the mind of generosity is the person who's cultivating the mind of generosity. It's not, that, the one person who we give, if we see someone who needs $2 for the bus on our way to the grocery store, yeah, they get $2. But if that's part of our training in being willing to give whatever sentient beings need, we're the ones that primarily benefit from that. They were just in that moment a particular way that mind was being expressed, but the mind itself is really what we benefit from. So training, all of these trainings of guru devotion, they're not for the guru, they're for our own mind. They're what speeds our own process of achieving enlightenment most dramatically, most powerfully. So, in a way, when he says purification, it could be that it's also a way of correcting mistakes that have been made in past lives or earlier in this life in relation to the spiritual friend. So, because we can't say that we've always, we're certainly ordinary sentient beings. And so logically in the past, we've had relationships with teachers where it didn't go as well as it could have. And so just like with Vajrasattva, when you have the power, the power of the antidote, the power of the remedial action, that can be a way, now when we serve tea to the guru, when we offer food to the guru, when we help to drive, the guru here or there, or make sure that they have groceries, or that is a way of correcting, kind of course correcting, and then it's purifying those past mistaken actions that we've engaged in by creating a new habit in the mind, just like when we sometimes they say that with the four opponent powers, a general way is like, you could, if you want to think about, killing, and then maybe you could give money to an organization that protects vulnerable people, or that would be some sort of remedial action. So this is sort of in that way also purifying past mistakes that were made with our guru devotion. Any thoughts or questions? I think that might be a good place to stop for today, because that's kind of the last contemplation on training the mind in correctly devoting through action. Um, so again, the takeaway is that we begin, that the foundation is training the mind in confidence, in seeing the Guru as Buddha, and then we train the mind in correctly relating in our actions, which primarily is seeking out the Guru's advice and implementing the Guru's advice. And then also, there is a component to that too, where we look after, we have this sense of caring for the Guru, caring about the Guru, thinking of the needs of the Guru, and then trying to provide for the Guru. To, again, not to say that we have to go into poverty and give it isn't like that, because of course they say that if the perfection of generosity meant that all sentient being, no, which is a slightly different point, but when they talk about like the perfection of generosity, they make it clear that you don't accomplish the perfection of generosity only when there are no sentient beings that have needs, when every single sentient being has their needs met. That has never happened, and it most likely can't ever happen. And yet, practitioners do accomplish the perfection of generosity when they become willing internally in their own mind to give whatever is necessary for sentient beings. That doesn't mean that that it's skillful necessarily to go into poverty or to, experience incredible hardship, but that eventually, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of moving in that direction, we wouldn't think twice about giving up our body. We wouldn't think twice about giving up our lives to protect others. So this is the same way, that it isn't to say that there's some standard, a financial standard or a materialistic standard that we're trying to meet, and that only by meeting that are we successful. It just means that we really cultivate intentionally over time a deep caring for the needs of the Guru, and that we try to fulfill those needs in line with our capacity and what's skillful and what's possible at the time. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes, Aaron.
Well,
and
Coda
then-
racer too. So my quick question was, this is a more like a practical question, but I know that like we have to if we want to do Vajrayana practice, we have to do Ngondro. And my question was, if we start Ngondro with like one lineage, can we have it complete another? Would that be against the Guru, or to change, let's say, the person we're working with?
I guess, I don't think that there's like a clear-cut answer. I think it depends in in some ways on whether we already have initiate, because of course now, I mean, people are giving initiations, just very widely. Even highest yoga tantra initiations, they're not difficult to find, and there isn't an understanding that a person will have finished, you know, a particular, all of the Nundro practices, and there's different, in the different lineages, you find different sets of, not all lineages have all of the same exact Nundro practices. Um, so Nundro is certainly meant to be very helpful, and it's in clearing away the obstacles and creating the accumulations of merit and so on that will help with that. But it's also true that there are many practices that are held in common among the different traditions. So I would say that if a person has decided, um, because like Gulug and Nyingma and Kagyu and Sakya, they do have different highest yoga tantra practices. Some they're not entirely. There are some differences in terms of which practices. So if a person is just kind of generally thinking about it in an abstract way, like, oh, at some point I'd like to, I need, at some point I need to practice highest yoga tantra, and therefore at some point Nundro practice becomes an important element of that, then I think it's probably ideal to stick with one lineage, because each of the lineages is highly internally consistent with like this particular, how everything fits together. And the different lineages, they all are effective, they all lead a person to enlightenment, but the intra-lineage consistency, maybe it's not as, doesn't fit together as tightly as within a single lineage. So if a person's in a position where it's sort of down the road, and then they might be just, then I would say, think about which lineage is going to work the best for you, and then kind of stick with that. If a person has taken initiation from a teacher, and that then there are commitments, then of course you honor those commitments. You see that person as one of your Vajra masters. You do the practice that they're describing, the way that they're describing it. And then I guess the question would be, is there a reason why it would become necessary to take a different initiate? Like if a person already has a highest yoga tantra practice, we kind of really only need one highest yoga tantra practice. Like for the action tantras, like there's different purposes, like why you might do medicine Buddha, you might also do Tara, you might also do Chenrezig, because they serve different purposes. But if a person is initiated into highest yoga tantra, you kind of only need to rely on one vehicle. Now, you may not have found the absolute best vehicle for you. Like His Holiness gives Kala Chakra, to tens of thousands of people. People might go because like it's His Holiness, and like that's a wonderful thing. and there may not necessarily be any real commitment, just kind of the commitment would be like 6 session guru yoga and that's sort of it. Um, and it could be, and of course, His Holiness isn't probably their own root guru. I mean, they might think of him as one of their root teachers, but they may have a more personal relationship with someone else that they're really able to get feedback on. And so their root teacher might be able to kind of tell them what their yidam is, which is like, this is the particular enlightened being that you karmically are most connected to, that you might make the most rapid progress in doing, in relying on that practice. So then, and then I would say, if a person finds themselves in a situation where they've taken initiation, they have a Vajra master, and then they can't necessarily, and then maybe they also have a root guru who's advising something else, then I would just kind of work it out with that person. I would just kind of say, these are, if you've already started Nundro, like I've done this many Vajrasattva, I've done, and it's in this. So then just kind of ask them, should I supplement that? I would just say, because again, the root of guru devotion is not that there's an external set of right and wrong answers. The right and wrong answer comes from the guru knowing your mind and giving you the right advice for you. So it's kind of something that you have to work out with your root guru. Like, should I stay in that lineage completely for my highest yoga tantra like practice, or should I supplement that with maybe Nundro from a different? So I would just say that they would be the ones that would have to help you navigate that, because the way that you're correctly devoting is by asking for that advice and then following that advice, not that they're going to consult the standard textbook that gives the right answer for all people.
Because I had received transmission in an Ngondro, but I took it with the idea of aspirationally to like one day practice it. And my understanding, although Danny corrected me thankfully, that it was like a thing you do your whole life. Like it's this long-term practice that you read. I thought you'd like just redo it over and over, actually, even if you do finish it.
Yeah, I mean, what they say is that the numbers, generally they say that the numbers that they give, like that's the number that you should do in order to be good at it. Like, that's when you're good at the practice, is after you've done 100,000 of this, or, that's when, but yeah, I mean, it could be confusing if the visualizations are quite different or the colors are quite different, once you've done a lot of it in a particular way, to kind of switch midstream and to try to visual, it could be really difficult to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, certainly it's not the best way to think about it, to think, oh, I'm done now. I did 100,000 Vajrasattva, so I never need to do Vajrasattva ever again, or I've done 100,000 water bowls, and so I'm done with water bowl practice, or, um, you know, we do the 100,000 in order to get really, really good at the practice, but then we keep doing it. Yeah. Any other? All right. So we'll leave it there for today. So then we will dedicate. So we recollect our altruistic motivation and think that by listening and participating, we actualized that motivation, which created positive energy, and we offer that positive energy for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception. Visualizing it ripening in incredibly vast, beneficial, profound ways, creating all of the necessary inner and outer conditions for for ordinary beings to transform their minds, achieve the state of enlightenment. So try to strongly visualize. All right. So thanks for coming. I will see you guys again on Thursday.